The year 1835 saw the eruption of the Texas Revolution, a brutal conflict between Anglo-American settlers in Mexican Texas and the centralist government of Mexico. This struggle for independence, lasting 6 months, was fueled by cultural clashes, political disagreements, and economic aspirations. Tensions had been growing over issues like immigration, slavery, and local autonomy. The revolution marked a shift from simmering resentment to open warfare. It was a fight for freedom and self-determination, altering Texas's destiny and redefining its relationship with Mexico. The seeds of the Texas Revolution were sown in the fertile ground of cultural misunderstanding, economic competition, and political discord. The Anglo-American settlers, arriving in Texas with their own distinct traditions and aspirations, often found themselves at odds with the Mexican government's policies and the existing Hispanic population. One of the primary sources of tension stemmed from the issue of slavery. The Mexican government, under pressure from abolitionist movements, both domestically and internationally, had taken steps to curtail and ultimately abolish slavery within its borders. This policy, however, directly clashed with the interests of many Anglo-American settlers, particularly those who had migrated from the southern United States and relied on enslaved labor for their economic prosperity. The Mexican government, eager to populate and develop its vast northern territories, initially encouraged Anglo-American immigration to Texas through generous land grants and promises of economic opportunity. This policy, however, had unintended consequences. The influx of Anglo settlers, with their distinct language, culture, and customs, gradually altered the demographic balance of the region, fueling anxieties among the existing Mexican population about the preservation of their cultural identity and political power. The Anglo-Texans, for their part, increasingly viewed the Mexican government as distant, unresponsive, and culturally alien. This growing sense of cultural and political alienation was further exacerbated by the Mexican government's efforts to centralize power and exert greater control over its sprawling territories. A pivotal moment in the escalating tensions between Anglo-Texans and the Mexican government came with the passage of the Law of April 6, 1830. This law, enacted under the presidency of Anastasio Bustamante, aimed to halt further Anglo-American immigration to Texas and strengthen Mexican control over the region. Among its provisions, the law, media, prohibition of slavery documents, settlers' reactions, scenes of slavery debates, prohibited the further importation of slaves into Texas, revoked existing empresario contracts that had not yet been fulfilled, and encouraged Mexican citizens and European immigrants to settle in the region. The Anglo-Texans viewed these measures as a direct attack on their economic interests, cultural autonomy, and political rights. The Law of April 6, 1830, rather than quelling dissent, served as a catalyst for further resistance and ultimately contributed to the outbreak of armed conflict. The escalating tensions between Anglo-Texans and the Mexican government were not merely the result of abstract political disagreements or cultural misunderstandings. They were also deeply rooted in competing economic interests. The Anglo-Texans, primarily engaged in agriculture, particularly cotton production, relied heavily on land acquisition and access to labor, including enslaved labor, for their economic prosperity. The Mexican government's efforts to curtail Anglo-American immigration, limit slavery, and impose tariffs on goods imported from the United States were seen by many Anglo-Texans as threats to their economic livelihoods. The Mexican government, for its part, viewed the Anglo-Texans' economic ambitions with suspicion, fearing that their growing economic power would translate into political dominance and ultimately threaten Mexican sovereignty over Texas. The simmering tensions between Anglo-Texan settlers and the Mexican government finally erupted into open conflict in 1835, marking the beginning of the Texas Revolution. Two early clashes, the Battle of Velasco and the Battle of Gonzales, though small in scale, proved to be pivotal in igniting the flames of rebellion and galvanizing support for the independence movement. These initial skirmishes, while lacking the strategic significance of later battles, exposed the deep-seated grievances and irreconcilable differences that had been festering for years between the Anglo-Texan colonists and the Mexican authorities. The Battle of Velasco, fought in June 1835, stemmed from a dispute over a Mexican cannon that had been granted to the citizens of Velasco, Texas, for their defense against Native American raids. When the Mexican military commander at Anahuac, Colonel Domingo Ugartequea, attempted to reclaim the cannon, the citizens of Velasco, led by William Barrett Travis, refused to comply. A brief but intense skirmish ensued, resulting in the surrender of the Mexican forces and the deaths of several soldiers on both sides. The Battle of Velasco, though militarily insignificant, demonstrated the willingness of Anglo-Texans to resort to arms to defend their perceived rights and resist what they viewed as Mexican tyranny. The Battle of Gonzales, occurring in October 1835, is widely considered the official start of the Texas Revolution. The conflict arose when Colonel Ugartequea, seeking to disarm the Anglo-Texan settlements, dispatched a detachment of Mexican soldiers to Gonzales to retrieve a small cannon that had been given to the town for protection against Native American attacks. The citizens of Gonzales, however, refused to surrender the cannon, viewing the Mexican demand as a provocation and a violation of their right to self-defense. They defiantly raised a flag bearing the image of the cannon and the words, "Come and take it," daring the Mexican troops to take it by force. When the Mexican soldiers arrived at Gonzales, they found the town defended by a small but determined force of Texian volunteers. A brief exchange of fire ensued, resulting in the retreat of the Mexican troops without the cannon. The Battle of Gonzales, though a minor military encounter, had profound symbolic significance. It marked the first time that Texian forces had openly resisted Mexican authority, effectively signaling the start of the armed rebellion. The "Come and take it" flag became a potent symbol of Texian defiance and a rallying cry for the independence movement. As the drums of war beat louder in Texas, Anglo-American settlers sought to articulate their grievances and explore avenues for peaceful resolution with the Mexican government. Two significant gatherings, the conventions of 1832 and 1833, served as platforms for Texian leaders to voice their concerns, petition for redress, and ultimately lay the groundwork for their eventual declaration of independence. These conventions, though initially seeking reconciliation with Mexico, reflected the growing sense of alienation and frustration among Anglo-Texans, highlighting their desire for greater autonomy and representation within the Mexican political system. The Convention of 1832, held in San Felipe de Austin, marked the first organized attempt by Anglo-Texans to address their grievances with the Mexican government. Delegates from various settlements across Texas assembled to discuss a range of issues, including the need for greater local self-governance, modifications to the immigration laws, and exemptions from certain Mexican tariffs that were deemed detrimental to the Texian economy. The convention drafted a petition to the Mexican Congress, respectfully outlining their concerns and proposing solutions that they believed would be mutually beneficial. Stephen F. Austin, widely respected as the father of Texas, was chosen to deliver the petition to Mexico City. The Convention of 1833, also held in San Felipe de Austin, convened the following year amidst growing frustration over the lack of response from the Mexican government to the previous year's petition. The delegates at the 1833 convention, emboldened by the lack of progress and fueled by increasing tensions with Mexican authorities, adopted a more assertive tone. They drafted a constitution for a proposed Mexican state of Texas, outlining a framework for greater autonomy and self-governance within the Mexican Republic. Stephen F. Austin, once again entrusted with delivering the Texian demands, embarked on a perilous journey to Mexico City, hoping to persuade the Mexican government to address the concerns of the Anglo-American colonists. Austin's mission to Mexico City proved to be a pivotal moment in the Texas Revolution. He arrived in the Mexican capital to find a government in turmoil, plagued by political instability and factionalism. Despite the challenges, Austin diligently presented the Texian petition and constitution, advocating for peaceful reform and greater autonomy for Texas. His efforts, however, were met with suspicion and resistance from powerful factions within the Mexican government, who viewed the Texian demands as a threat to Mexican sovereignty. Austin's mission ended in failure when he was arrested and imprisoned on charges of sedition. effectively severing the last remaining threads of diplomacy and pushing Texas closer to the brink of open rebellion.